So today's sermon, as you know, I've titled Winter Solstice, a Turning Point. And I want to spend a few moments with you examining exactly what that might mean. And as we know, of course, every year, without fail, the earth arrives at this very moment. The winter solstice, the longest night, the deepest darkness. And it happens quietly. There are no trumpet sounds, no announcement is made. The world does not suddenly brighten before our eyes. In fact, if we're honest, it still feels very dark. Sometimes even colder, perhaps, sometimes heavier. And yet, something profound is shifting. This, today, is the turning point. It's the moment, as you know, where the earth tilts on its axis, reaches the furthest point from the sun, and then almost imperceptibly begins to turn back. And from this day forward, the light is slowly returning. And as we know, the days begin to lengthen, the arc of the sun begins to lift, and what has been waning, once again, will now begin to grow. For thousands of years, human beings have noticed this moment and marked it as sacred. Long before clocks and calendars, before electric lights and central heating, people lived close enough to the land to know that this turning was vital. Darkness, of course, for many meant potential danger, and cold very often also meant scarcity. And so the return of light for them, however small, was not just poetic, it was, of course, survival. And so, if any of you have been to places like Stonehenge, you will know that circles were built to catch the sun's first returning rays. And fires were lit, and candles were placed in windows later. And stories, of course, were told. And these were stories of rebirth, of hope, of life refusing to disappear. And this is because the solstice teaches us something essential. And that is that darkness does not have the final word. And yet, of course, it would be dishonest and disingenuous to pretend that darkness is easy, or, of course, that it's something that we can or should simply rush through or disregard even. But as we know, especially living in the Northeast, that winter invites us into something deeper than just cheerfulness. Whoopee, here comes the sun. No. Instead, it asks us to pause, to rest, to even acknowledge what has been lost, what has been difficult, what has weighed heavily on our hearts. For many of us, and I'm pretty certain everyone here would agree to one degree or another, that this year has carried many of its long, long nights. Nights of uncertainty, nights of grief, nights of worry about the world, about violence, injustice, our climate, division, upheaval, and of course, nights of personal struggle and quiet loneliness, or indeed questions that don't have easy answers. And so I want to stress that the message of the solstice does not deny any of this. It does not say, everything is fine now. Instead, I believe it says something far more honest and more hopeful. It says that turning can happen even while it's still dark. Think about that. Turning can happen even while it's still dark. It's human nature, of course. So often of us believe that we must feel better before things can change. We sometimes erroneously think that healing requires brightness first. And we imagine on occasion that hope will come fully formed, glowing and obvious and clear to all. But the solstice tells us otherwise. The light begins its return while the night is still long. And that is a profound truth. The change happens beneath the surface way before we can see it. And there, of course, is wisdom here for our spiritual lives. How many times have we stood in our own winter thinking, nothing is shifting, nothing is growing, nothing is changing, same old, same old. I know that I have a proclivity for that. When in fact, of course, something already is, because it's just the universal way. A decision that hasn't been made yet is quietly forming. A new understanding before we fully thought it through is taking root. A grief that grips us and holds us in despair is actually beginning to soften at the edges. And a courage where we can at this point see none or feel none is gathering strength. So the solstice reminds us that transformation is often invisible at first. In Unitarian Universalism, we speak often about the sacredness of our natural world, not as something that is separate from us, but something that, of course, we are part of. We are interdependent. And the turning of the earth, of course, is not just an astronomical event. It is, I believe, a mirror. It reflects back to us the rhythms of our own lives. We are, and many, many traditions say this, of course, that we are and have seasons of expansion and contraction, seasons of light and of shadow, seasons of growth and much activity, and then of rest and quiet. And unfortunately, in our modern Western culture, we don't always honor these rhythms. We're encouraged to keep going, keep producing, keep smiling, keep pushing forward, keep working, keep doing, even when our spirits are tired. But winter says, gently, but I think also firmly, rest is not failure. It's not giving up. And darkness is not a mistake. And stillness is not stagnation. In fact, in nature, as we know, winter is when the deepest work happens. Roots go stronger underground. Seeds lie dormant, gathering energy, essential energy. The soil is slowly regenerating, and life prepares itself quietly for what is coming next. So what if we too trusted that something similar is happening within us? What if, instead of judging our own winter seasons, we actually stopped and honored them? What if we allowed ourselves to name what feels heavy without shame, and also to welcome it, to allow it, to sit with the questions rather than chasing after the answers, and to let ourselves be held by community rather than pretending that we all need to be strong all the time? Not gaslighting ourselves or doing what sometimes in many spiritual communities, we're vulnerable to it, of course, which is spiritual bypass. The solstice also invites us to consider, what kind of light are we actually welcoming back? Because light is not only brightness and joy. Light is clarity. Light is truth. Light is compassion. And sometimes, unfortunately, the light shows us things that we'd really rather not see or admit to ourselves, and systems around us and within us that harm, and habitats and habits that are no longer serving because the life has been choked out of them. There are places in us and around us where we do need to change. As people of faith, whatever that may be, and conscience, the returning light calls us not just to comfort, but also to accept the responsibility of that light returning. It asks, what will we do with this growing light? Will we use it to see one another more clearly? Will we use it to listen more deeply? Will we use it to act more courageously on behalf of justice and dignity for all? Because the solstice is not the end of winter. There are, as we know, still cold days ahead, and still storms to come, and still long, long nights. But from this moment on, the direction has changed, and direction matters. Hope, after all, is not the belief that everything will be suddenly easy. Hope, in fact, is the knowledge, the certainty that we are moving towards something together. So today, as we gather, not to banish darkness, but instead to honor it, we gather to notice this turning and to mark this essential sacred pause. To remember that even when the world feels heavy, the ark can and will bend, and the light can and will return, and life can and will renew itself in ways both seen and unseen. So my desire for myself and for us is that we use this solstice time for reflection and growth. And also, of course, as Arlene said earlier, never to exist in a sense of myopia. Because, of course, while one of us is experiencing winter solstice, others are experiencing summer solstice. It's a reminder that there is always the experience of the other, not just our own. And light, as we know, also casts shadow. And we must be mindful always of the shadows within, the shadows that we cast upon one another, and of course, upon our world. And the solstice is a reminder that regardless of whether it's the longest day or the shortest day, we are connected. And like the sun, which touches every part of this beautiful planet we call home, this is a time for us to commit to kindness to ourselves and to each other and to the world. And I'd like to close with a beautiful saying from one of my favorite writers. He's actually in New York. His name is Ocean Vuong. I know I've shared some things of his before, but he says that in the spirit of mindfulness, to take off the shoes of your voice, to take off the shoes of your voice, and to tread carefully and mindfully and carefully and respectfully and lovingly. Thank you, everybody.
If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.